أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Today I want to discuss one of the uh, current issues, that is blasphemy. But blasphemy, in my view, cannot be discussed without simultaneously at the same time discussing freedom of speech, particularly in the West. These two things uh, have been going together. Therefore, we have to understand both of them together if we want to solve this outstanding historical issue since very long. Uh, uh, there is a religious aspect and there are other aspects also. So I think we have to take all these things into consideration at a time. Today, inshallah, I'll try to discuss blasphemy and the freedom of speech. And then I propose that in the coming weeks also some related issues along with this. This is not the only thing that can solve the issue. We have to solve this issue peacefully. If we don't understand the problem, or if we don't know what to communicate, how to communicate, then we'll not be able to solve it. It is therefore very important to understand other related aspects of the issue and what we can do in this respect in order to solve it uh, peacefully, and also in order to solve it in a manner that all concerned feel secure, safe, and satisfied. Let us see, so far as today's topic is concerned, that is blasphemy and freedom of speech, both together. Let us see what is blasphemy. Wherever blasphemy is banned, there is a law also. When there is a law, it means it is banned. Wherever there is a law, then the law punishes it as a religious crime. And it becomes a religious crime if anyone speaks or writes or communicates in any manner anything which amounts to evil speaking or evil communication regarding a deity or a person who is considered to be sacred or holy. So this is in nutshell. But if there is no law, then it cannot be punished. Let us understand right in the beginning. It is punishable only when there is a law, and law means the positive law. Not only that, it is in the scripture. It is not, it is in the religion. Wherever there is positive law, then only it can be punished. Otherwise, it cannot be punished if there is no positive law. So far as religion is concerned, for example, in the Leviticus, there is a very clear provision in the Bible, one of the books, Leviticus, there is a clear provision for punishment of blasphemy. And at that time, it was capital punishment. So it's not only in the Leviticus, but there are many other references in different books of the Bible where there are different categories of blasphemy, and these are some of the references. And this has remained in religion, it has remained punishable right from Noah, Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam. And there are clear provisions in different books and different suhuf right from Nuh alayhi salam. Similarly, it's not only the blasphemy of God, but if there are other references like calumny, evil speaking, or abuse, which amount to blasphemy, which are in the sense of blasphemy, they are also in the religion. But kindly keep in mind, I have already submitted that it is punishable only when there is a positive law. This is in the scripture. These provisions are in the scripture only. There came a time when there were a lot of disputations, debates taking place. Sorry, lot of debates were taking place in order to solve this problem. And some of the known famous disputations which have taken place, these were during the period which is called Middle Ages, from 500 to 1500. Period from 500 AD to 1500, it is called the period of Middle Ages. And the period from, particularly period from 500 to 1000 AD is called the period of Dark Ages. So it was during the period of Middle Ages that, and particularly during the Dark Ages period of the Middle Ages, that these debates were taking place. And some of the well-known disputations or debates which took place, I have given the names, like one in Paris and at many other places also. Now, this is one of the disputations, for example, in Paris, at the court of King of France, were praised 35 blasphemous passages about Jesus and Mary or Christianity in the Talmud. So it is also known as the trial of the Talmud. And that took place at the King of France, in the court of the King of France. The Commission of Christian Theologians condemned Talmud to be burned, and on 17 June 1244, 24 carriage loads of Jewish religious manuscripts were set on fire publicly. This is the period, you keep in mind, this is the period of the Middle Ages. And Muslims also did the same thing. When the fatwa was given against philosophy, against Mutazilites, and particularly after the fatwa of Ghazali, the books of philosophy, particularly the books of Ibn Sina, were burned. This was the period when the blasphemy was being used, and it is continuously being used for the persecution of people. This is, this has happened in almost in all religions. In Hinduism also, there are many examples. We are not going into those things, but we are giving the references also. In translation of Talmud, you remember about 10, 15 years back, there was a great pressure that some passages in Quran should be removed. In Talmud, from Talmud, certain discourses, as they're identified in the Paris disputation or other disputations, they were taken out from Talmud. Although there was a lot of resistance that they were taken out from Talmud, but now they are restored in the Hebrew versions. They are available. In the textual and historical position of Islam on blasphemy, so far as the position of Islam is concerned, the Quran admonishes blasphemy, but it does not specify any worldly punishment for blasphemy. This is very important. The Muslims should particularly know this. They should understand this. They should examine this, analyze this, revisit this, and see what is the correct position. The Quran, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if they are disputing, then leave this matter to me. On the last day, a day of judgment, I'll deal with this issue. However, other literature suggests various punishments for blasphemy. It is in the literature, not in the Quran. And then death penalty applies to cases where treason is also involved, especially during times of war. If the blasphemy is of such a nature that it has been committed as a treason, as there is a treason of constitution of any country, if it has been committed in the nature of a treason of the high of the supreme law, which amounts to treason, then only in the Islamic concept there can be. It is not that anybody may take the law in his own hands and decide the matter in the street himself and shoot anybody or kill anybody. No, the Quran particularly does not allow this. Islam does not allow this. This is not permissible in Islam. And Quran specifically, very specifically mentions that no one can kill anybody except bil haqq, that is, except through the due process of law. Haqq means law and fact both. Due process of law. It means a person himself individually is not, or any group individually is not authorized to take the law in his hands. It is the due process of law, bil haqq, that will take care of it if there is anything. First, they will have to see what has happened, what is the evidence, how it has happened, whether it amounts to treason or not, what it is. Anyway, why the issue is lingering on at present in the world, according to the survey which had taken place in 2012, and the situation is changing every year. I'll show you. The anti-blasphemy laws were present in 32 countries only. Out of about 200, the laws, the positive law against blasphemy is available only in, was available in 2012 in 32 countries, and today it is less than that. At that time, it was only 32 countries. This is the legal position. We are living in the legal community of the world, global village. Then hate speech laws, these are available only in 87 countries. When we are speaking about the issue at a global level, we have to take these things into consideration, that what is the practical, what is the ground reality which we are facing. Without understanding the dimensions of the issue, we cannot tackle it. And that is why we have not been able to tackle it, because we don't understand it. People become sentimental, they commit a crime, they take the law in their own hands, and then the entire people, entire ummah, entire nation, and all the people around the world get involved without understanding the real dimensions. These are some of the countries where the blasphemy laws to protect religious beliefs of minorities or their minorities are there. These are some of the countries. Names of the countries. Now, blasphemy has been abolished as a conscious effort, as a political effort, through a process of law, through parliaments in countries, in some countries. I have shown you the figures of 2012, and I said that now today the figure is different. It must be different today. France was the first country. In 1881, they abolished the blasphemy law. So when anybody is talking to the French, they should understand their position historically and legally. They abolished the blasphemy law in 1881. In communication, in debates, in parleys, in negotiations, it is very important to understand the position of the other person, other party. And simultaneously, it is also extremely important to see whether I am able to convey my position or not. Without understanding the position of other party and without being able to convey one's own position, how can we achieve the result of that dialogue? It will just be talking and talking into the air and fighting and getting the people involved, making them emotional through speeches and taking out the processions of millions of people without solving the problem that continues. It's not only that they abolished. There is a lull. from 1881 to 1970. These are rough approximations of periods and other things. Sweden abolished it in 1970. But then all of a sudden we find that from 2008 to 2019, there is a surge in the number of countries, and very important countries, they abolished the blasphemy law. Do we understand this issue, that why it happened, particularly during this period? We need to understand this, that in each country, in these countries, 2008, 2014, 15, 2009, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, these countries, New Zealand, in 2019, they abolished the blasphemy laws. Now they don't have blasphemy laws, these countries. There are others also, these are important countries. There are no blasphemy laws. However, European Court of Human Rights, they did not agree to this position when the case was filed there in 2018. And it was pleaded there on the main argument was freedom of speech. That on the basis of freedom of speech, the blasphemy law should be struck down. They didn't agree. They declined to strike down the blasphemy law. They protected it, and it is there. Under the European law, European Commission. Although individual countries, some of them I have shown you, they have struck down, but the European Commission has not struck down. What is the position of United Nations? United Nations has passed several resolutions against defamation of religions. Many resolutions, and continuously, every year. This is very interesting. This is very important. I request every Muslim, particularly every member of the Ummah, to kindly examine this very carefully and allow me to read this also. The campaign for worldwide criminal penalties for defamation of religions had been spearheaded by OIC. On behalf of United Nations large Muslim bloc. At the United Nations, they allowed the other Muslim countries also to join the committee of the OIC, and they formed a large Muslim bloc. It means all the Muslim countries of the world, they were given the task, and United Nations was behind. They supported that you bring out a consensus how to deal with this issue and do away with this issue. The resolution was being passed since 1919 every year. But examine, every year the support was declining. Every year there were lesser number of votes in support of the resolution for doing away with blasphemy internationally. And this was the challenge to all the Muslim countries. But now here comes the outcome. The campaign ended in 2011. The entire Muslim bloc, the entire OIC, they ended the campaign. When the proposal was withdrawn in Geneva because of lack of support, it means internationally there is no support. It is declining, and it declined every year to the extent that the entire Muslim bloc, they withdrew their proposal of bringing in the blasphemy laws or banning it, making an end to establish worldwide blasphemy structures. We are living in a global village. We have to critically think what we can do and what we cannot. And if we cannot, then we have to find out a peaceful way as a community. It's a human community on this planet. Blasphemy versus freedom of speech. As I said, that blasphemy cannot be discussed without freedom of speech, because historically particularly in the different revolutions and movements of Renaissance, they went hand in hand. Blasphemy dimensions are relatable at least to the following. These dimensions we have to understand. The most important dimension behind the issue of blasphemy is religion. And today it is Islamophobia. When it pertains to Muslims, it is Islamophobia. Some time back it was Christianity. And you have seen when we're talking about Talmud, it was Judaism. But today it is Islam. Today is Islamophobia. There was a time when Servetus, he was burned along with his all books in Geneva under the decision of the city council, burned alive on the heap of his own books. Ibn Sina's books were burned, but Ibn Sina was saved. This has been happening in the history. There are people who were researching in science, they faced this situation. Bruno was burnt alive. And then constitution and law, they guarantee freedom of speech, and increasingly the number of countries is increasing every day. They are protecting the freedom of speech. And in different countries, the definitions are different. What is the freedom of speech? It is different in different countries. Then politics is also. There's a lot of politics involved. People are misusing it. Politicians particularly. Everywhere. Then perspective of Renaissance. We have to keep the perspective of the historical struggle through which people have got these blasphemy laws struck down, and they are still working on this, still continuing their struggle, and their struggle in getting the freedom of speech incorporated in the constitutions and in the legal systems of their countries. These things we have to understand while talking to these people. Then secular perspective. There is obviously, definitely a secular perspective to these movements. The movement Reformation, not only Reformation, but other movements which they were taking place, there was a secular perspective also behind that. It was not only religion within religion or religion versus religion, but there was a secular perspective also which was bringing in new ideas. And actions, kindly analyze here. This is very critical, particularly for the Muslims today. Actions not emanating from churches or synagogues. The actions in France have not emanated from the churches or synagogues, but still people speaking from the pulpit in the Muslim world, they are bringing in the Yahud and Nasara together in this issue. We have to understand, analyze this. It has emanated from where this issue has come up this time, and how to tackle it peacefully in the West, in contrast to mosques and madrasas. In Muslim countries, for example, mostly this problem, not always, mostly jumps out from the madrasas or mosques. It may be coming out from the church also. It may be coming out from some synagogue also. It may be coming out from others also. But we have to analyze each time from where this flesh has come. Who is behind it? Who is dealing with this? We mix up politics and religion, and then we are not able to solve the problem. And then media is most unscrupulously on commercial basis exploiting this issue everywhere. These are different dimensions. If you have to address this issue peacefully, then we have to understand all these dimensions. Now, what is the latest position in French issue? Let us analyze it. There are two aspects. One is the public opinion in the West. In the West, public opinion and government response. Have we analyzed it? Or we are just jumping into fire? Now, this is a on the comment on the reporting, the way of reporting of New York Times. French are not happy with the way it has been reported in America, because America on this issue is supporting Muslims. Kindly analyze it deeply. What he says, this researcher, about this incident, the New York Times ran with the woefully misleading headline. They are not happy with the way it has been reported here. French police shoot and kill man after a fatal knife attack on the street. This is the reporting of New York Times, and they're not happy with that. That they have blamed the French police for shooting a man. And then the next part follows that part. They say this is they don't like this way of reporting. They would have said that a Muslim has killed a Christian, or Muslim had killed a Jew. This is how they flare up, get the matters flared. But we don't look through, we read in between the lines. Here people are speaking against almost everybody in the West. Kindly understand, know your friends who is supporting you. Framed through the lens of liberal American anxieties over police violence. They are blaming the Americans for not supporting them clearly. Now look at another comment. He is Liam Duffy. He is researcher, speaker, and trainer in the Counter-Terrorism Institute based in London. He says, why in the Anglo media? Why is Anglo media? Now he's not happy with the entire Anglo media, the entire media of the people who are speaking English, France, England, America, and others, portraying France as the villain in this incident. They are blaming France, not Muslims. Have we analyzed these things? But we are targeting everybody, generally. And they have commented in these words. These are taken from this, and this statement available there. This article is also available there. And French are shocked by the lack of support from their American and British friends. Not only this, but in very clear terms, they are complaining about this. And still our people, without understanding from the pulpit or from in the streets and the processions, they are talking about everybody in the West. Another comment, a portion of French anger is reserved for Anglo-Saxon. A growing number of people, both in and out of government, feel, this is their French sentiment, that their country is being madly misread and misrepresented in the Anglosphere, in this West. Another comment, it's not unusual to find right. They are complaining that France is being blamed today by the West, by the English-speaking people, that they are doing these things, the actions which are taken now, for the purpose of their own electioneering campaigns and against Islam. And they are trying to implement the hardline secularism. Secularism is okay, but secularism sometimes becomes harder than the religious line. Print media comment that print media is not supporting them. Again, New York Times and Washington Post, they have complained against both these papers that they are not supporting the French on this issue, they are supporting Muslims. There are ways to support. You have to read in between the lines. You have to understand in where one is being friendly or where one is being inimical. Here, there is always a marriage of convenience. And it is from point to point. It is not a blind friendship or personal friendship. You have to analyze at every point who is the friend. Look at this comment by another journalist, Caroline Florist. She says, This is soft, this is American soft power helping Islamist soft power. Look at this again. Britain was not very eager to support France, and they are complaining about this. The early silence from the British government compared to other European leaders was deafening. We need to develop critical thinking at least at the leadership level in the Muslim world, at the scholarly level, at the level of the scholars, the imams. Do we know this? Now, coming to the part of freedom of speech, because we cannot understand blasphemy without understanding freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is a principle that supports freedom of individual, or group, or nation, or people. It is a principle. People have given lives for this to achieve freedom of speech. Freedom of expression is a human right. It is a fundamental human right, not only a human right, it's a fundamental human right. All other human rights depend upon the freedom of expression. How will they give it up so easily? They've given lives. It is there in the UN Charter. It is in the international human rights law. It is in the civil law. It is in the criminal law. It is in the international covenant on civil and political rights. Without understanding this, how can we discuss the issue at any forum? Freedom of expression is so fundamental a human right, fundamental human right, that it reinforces all other human rights. Sweden was the first country to abolish censorship and strengthen freedom of speech. Then Denmark, then Norway. Remember the names where the blasphemy law was abolished. These things are going together, hand in hand, in those countries. The first amendment of the Constitution of the United States, 1787, these people became awakened, aware of their rights, 18th century, and we still don't know these things. Guarantees freedom of speech and the freedom of press, freedom of media. 18th century. Freedom of speech has two aspects: what to say and what not to say. This is also important to understand. Freedom of speech does not mean to say anything, anytime, anywhere. These are limitations. What to say, when, what to say, where, and what not to say. When and what not to say, where. And along with this is what not to say to someone or some people. These are all incorporated in the definition. Then when the debate comes, one has to understand the legal position and debate on these issues. That yes, there is freedom of speech, but you are transgressing the freedom of speech on these grounds, on these legal aspects. Magnificence of the freedom of speech in USA. You have seen it, 1787, they guarantee liberty to criticize the government. It is here that the constitutionalists, the legal minds, when it comes to debate, they debate that yes, freedom of speech is mainly in the perspective of speaking for your rights to the government. It is not for speaking for the violation of rights of some individuals. We are not tackling on this point. Liberty to criticize the government and speak their minds without fear of being censored or persecuted. This is freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not maligning or disgracing or defaming an individual or a group or its religion or its faith or its color. That is not freedom of speech. but we are generally presenting in a very naive way, naive manner. Another aspect, that you can petition to the government for a redress of grievances, and in that petition you can speak your mind. And this is the peaceful way that has been provided in the Constitution. This is the First Amendment. No one is allowed to harm others. This is the other side of the coin. Same coin, freedom of speech. The other side of the coin, you can't harm anybody. At the United Nations, and I have referred to ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, they know that blasphemy laws are incompatible with the covenant. As I said, they go hand in hand. It means that the blasphemy laws are reducing and the freedom of speech laws are strengthening because of certain incompatibilities at certain points. And this principle has been recognized. We have to, if you have to speak at the United Nations, you have to address this point, whether it is incompatible or compatible. But in the matter of religion, it has a different aspect. You have to tackle it legally. Peaceful forums are available, like United Nations formed a larger Muslim bloc. But we failed to convince the people of the governments of the world, and people of the world, they gave a free hand. They supported. Every year they passed the resolution. Not all speech is protected. When we say freedom of speech, under the Constitution and under the law, not all speech is protected. And despite freedom of speech, the Constitution does not give the right to say anything one wants and anywhere he wants publicly. So under the garb of freedom of speech, France can't do this. But we have to tackle this issue properly, and we cannot tackle it properly unless we know all these points, all these things. When you're talking at that level, you have to be expert in these things. You have to understand, we have to understand this. The processions of 1 million people will not solve this issue. No one can be allowed to use speech under the law. Under the law, in the European countries, in America, in the West, no one can be allowed to use speech for, these are the things provided in the law, and that includes religion. That speech cannot be allowed to be used against religion, defamation of religion, defamation of a particular people of that religion. Freedom of speech and expression is not absolute. Under the law and supported by the philosophers, supported by the universities, supported by the intelligentsia, there are two main principles which are accepted, that freedom of speech is not absolute on these two principles. One is harm principle and the other is offense principle. If you prove that such and such action of the government, for example, the present action of the French government, is harmful, it is struck under by the harm principle, or it is struck by the offense principle, then it is not acceptable to these enlightened people, to these courts, to this intelligentsia. But don't lose the support of this intelligentsia. Take them on your side, convince them, talk to them, and without understanding their terminology and position, you cannot talk to them. International Covenant on Civil Rights also, civil and political rights also says that any advocacy of national, racial, or religious hatred that constitutes incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence shall be prohibited by law. why the civil society of the Ummah is not working on these grounds, bringing out laws, drafts, convincing people. But we have seen that even the Muslim bloc and the OIC, they failed. Hate speech. The statements by the President of France or other politicians there, if they contain the content, if there's a content of hate speech, that is not permissible under the laws of these advanced countries, constitutions of these countries. Hate speech means any kind of communication in speech or writing or behavior that is against the religion, if it is based on religion. So why? Instead of for that, we are fighting in the streets. It includes incitement to hatred, offense against public order, stirring public bigotry. They are making people bigots and zealots, and so on. In Canada, it is an offense to communicate statements in a public place which incite hatred against any identifiable group like Muslims. It is the same in New Zealand, it is the same in England, it is the same in America. But we are not using our minds and these legal systems there and the civil society there, and who are in fact sometimes helping the presently the American media, supporting the Muslim, in a softer way. ICCPR states that exercise of these rights, freedom of speech, for example, is a right, carries special duties and responsibilities. It is not without a duty and responsibility. The French president should also know this, and he knows it. But the politics comes in. I've shown you that there are certain elements which are hindering. A victim of hate speech may seek redress under civil law, criminal law, or both, but he cannot take the law in his own hands. He can seek in every country. He can seek the redress for his grievance. But instead of that, people take the law in their own hands. That is the problem. And there is a threshold up to what point any speech can be tolerated. And there are different thresholds of tolerance under the law. The laws that protect public order prescribe higher threshold. Somebody cannot be rounded up immediately just on the basis of this law. It has a higher threshold. The courts examine it deeply, go deeper and deeper into it. But the laws that protect human dignity and this religion, human dignity includes your freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of mind, freedom of expression. The laws that protect human dignity have lower threshold for violation. Even a slight violation by the government or by any president can be struck by this law, can be tried under this law. In this background, in this situation, we find the conclusion appears to be that in this situation, the response from and to the religions remains misdirected failure. As I've shown you that the OIC and the Muslim bloc also failed. It has remained a failure, total failure. Now, next time, inshallah, I would like to take up this Ashti Name of Muhammad at St. Catherine's Monastery. Next week, inshallah. But so far, I stop here. In this situation, the response from and to religions remains misdirected failure. Subhana rabbika.
اللهم صل اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت، وعافنا فيمن عافيت، وتولنا فيمن توليت، وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت، وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت، فإنك يا ربنا تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا، وانفعنا بما علمتنا، وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك، وبطاعتك عن معصيتك، وفضلك عن من سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك على كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us. Shower us with your blessings. Increase our knowledge. Grant us forgiveness. And reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who passed away. Oh Allah, grant them your mercy. Make their graves garden from heaven, and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, remedy our sick and grant them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, grant our son Maraj and all our sick relatives and friends speedy and full recovery. You alone is the ultimate curer. There is no. Oh Allah, grant them a cure that leaves no ailment or injury. Oh Allah, we seek from you all of the good, whether we know it or we don't. And we seek your refuge from all evil, whether we know it or we don't. Oh Allah, we ask with every name you have elected for yourself that none of us leave this gathering, but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والسلام عليكم